What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another NFL draft rumors update video. Look, we're a day out from the draft, so this kind of thing just happens. And I was actually thinking back, a few years ago, we had done videos like this. I remember just getting hammered with rumors right before the draft. It may have been the day of the draft or the day before, and I'm posting these videos, and I don't even know if anything we reported actually came true. And that's just how it is with rumors. We went through a lot of rumors in our last live stream, so feel free to check that one out. And I do plan on being live today with Rad. A lot of things to touch on the day before the draft. But with all that being said, we have some rumors, so let's get it started.
The Detroit Lions select Jameson Roman. Josh Pascal. Kirby Joseph. Rodriguez. James Mitchell. James Houston. NFL draft is now officially open.
Welcome everybody to my video. Glad you guys are here. I'm not sure why I feel like I've lost my voice a little bit. I don't know what was going on. I mean, I was watching Rocky last night, but I wasn't like, you know what I'm saying, like losing my mind. Okay, I'm just saying. Either way though, that's besides the point. We got some rumors that we need to touch on here. A couple of these are specific to the Detroit Lions, and there's also a couple of prospect rumors that have been thrown out there as well that could be targets for the Detroit Lions. So I thought it would be important to just kind of toss it into this video, something to think about. And I think all of these actually could be true. I definitely think that all of these could be true. They would make a lot of sense to me, and I believe all of these are according to Walter Football. Shout out to those guys. But we're going to start with the rumors first, specifically affecting the Detroit Lions. And the first one that we have, and I believe this all surfaced today, it could have happened a couple of days ago, but at least I saw these today, so that's what I'm talking about him. The first one is about running back DeAndre Swift, and the report, according to Walter Football, is that the Detroit Lions have received calls for DeAndre Swift after David Montgomery signed to the Lions. Now, I don't know if that means that these have been ongoing for a while now, we're just hearing about them, or is this something that just picked up recently? As I said before, I think if a trade did happen, it would kind of make a lot of sense that it could happen during draft day for the Lions, because that's when, you know, the bullets are flying, right? Teams are drafting running backs, so you get a sense of who's available, who's not available. Do I want to get one now? If the Lions draft a running back, could they be more urgent to be like, okay, we're really willing to part ways here, but if their guy doesn't fall, or if there's multiple guys and they don't get him and they're like, now we want to hold on to DeAndre Swift. So it'd make a lot of sense to me that something like this definitely could happen, especially maybe in that, you know, round 4 gap, if they don't kind of clear that up, if there's that huge gap of time that they have, that something like that could potentially happen. I know in one of my mock drafts I traded him to the Saints because who knows about the Alvin Kamara situation. Now, speaking on that for a second, I don't think a DeAndre Swift trade would necessarily bring huge returns for the Detroit Lions. Okay, we've looked at some of the past trades around the league, and it hasn't been like monster returns for guys with 1 year left on their deal. Obviously, he's had some injuries, which has hampered him. I think a lot of teams like him around the league. I think the Lions really like him. They know the skill set that's there when he's right, when he's healthy. The dude's super dynamic. I think everybody in the league knows that, and everybody kind of wants that, but it's only 1 year left on his deal. There's not going to be a 5th year option because he was a 2nd round pick. So I don't think a return for DeAndre Swift would be massive for the Lions. And it's not a huge cap thing that they need to clear up cap space or something like that. So I just don't think they'd get a huge return if something like this took place. Now, if you look at the Lions' current depth chart at running back, you have David Montgomery, who signed the 3-year deal, even though you can kind of get out of this deal after 2 years. I mean, you could after 1, but more so after 2, it's much more of a clear out because there's no really guaranteed salary at that point. You're just then looking at the signing bonus that's spread out with a void year. So then you're looking at about just over $2 million for dead cap after 2 seasons. And the way that his cap hits are set up is that this year, not very expensive, $2.8 million, but next year it rises to $6.8 million. I feel pretty comfortable at this point in time thinking that he's going to be here for at least the next 2 years as the Lions maybe top running back. That's kind of the sense that I have right now. I mean, we'll see on that one because, again, you can get out after 2 years if the Lions wanted to. They just wouldn't save a lot of money doing it. It'd just be a pretty good amount of dead cap there, but we'll see. I think he'll be around for at least the next 2 years. But beyond that, you have DeAndre Swift then, 1 year left on his deal. You have Craig Reynolds, who's re-signed to a 1 year deal, even though you can easily get out of that contract. And you got Jamar Jefferson, who's not even with your top 51 contracts. And I believe you have guys like Greg Bell as well, the UDFA. So the running back depth, I think regardless of even changing anything, the Lions could definitely still look to draft a running back. Now, I think it also would have an impact on how high you drafted a running back, because if you draft a running back seemingly within like the first 3 rounds, I think there's a pretty good chance his role is going to be a front of a guy like DeAndre Swift because you invest in him. It doesn't have to be. It does not have to be, but you definitely could, especially when you're talking about a running back in that sense, especially the first 2 rounds. And then it's like, well, hold up, then DeAndre Swift is your running back 3, then it's just like, well, what's the point if I can get anything if I'm willing to take a running back that high? Like if the Lions wanted to draft Bijan, I know some people are on that, and somehow they landed Bijan in the first round, Bijan Robinson out of Texas, then at that point having DeAndre Swift, like he's clearly your number 3 running back, unless you're playing him over David, which doesn't seem likely. He's like your number 3 running back. Now, I think Swift does skill set wise give you a really nice like kind of 1-2 punch with a guy like David Montgomery. Of course, his quickness, his pass game upside, even though I think we've seen some drops, his pass protection has taken some leaps, especially this last year, so give him a lot of credit for that. But I think his skill set could definitely be a really nice number 2 if healthy alongside David Montgomery. But if the Lions are willing to invest kind of high, a Jahmyr Gibbs, it'd be really hard to find playing time initially outside of injuries for a guy like DeAndre Swift. So then a trade at that point just seems to make sense. But I think if it happened later in the draft, well, yes, you still could potentially look to move DeAndre Swift. Even if he still made the roster, you could make the case that it's like, no, we're fine with having those 3. Now, it's going to be difficult for obviously guys like Jamar to make the team and Craig Reynolds then to make the team. I mean, it could happen because those are special teams pieces. That third-day running back would probably have to be a special teams piece for you immediately, and then he'd be battling for spot with DeAndre Swift. And again, then it's back to the question, what kind of running back is that? I would think it'd be more of a pass game type of running back, at least with the upside to play on the pass game, because I think that's kind of a missing piece for the Lions. For example, like a Kenny McIntosh, like if that's the route that they went, it'd still be a situation where do they really lean Kenny McIntosh over Swift when healthy? Probably not. But if he could at least play on special teams, then maybe you could find a role, because we don't have Justin Jackson under contract, who was our kick returner. I don't think it's the hardest thing for the Lions to find a kick returner, but we don't have it. So if he could maybe play that kind of role or be a different, piece on special teams, then at least then he can get some snaps while also at the same time not completely replacing Swift immediately. So with that being said, it just depends on what the Lions look at for the running back position. I could definitely see something like this happening in this year's draft for sure, but I think it would be something that would happen during draft day when bullets are flying, teams are seeing which running backs are going where. If the Lions are unable to land a running back that they want, maybe they're like, we don't want to move him. But if they are, then maybe they're like, okay, we're willing to move him a little bit more, and same thing for other teams around the league. But we'll see on that one. I like DeAndre Swift. I'm hoping for the best there, but the fact is he only has 1 year left on his deal, so the odds I think are of you getting a big return, even if he became a free agent after the season and signed elsewhere through a comp pick, is very unlikely, because now we have salary cap space, so I don't see that being something that you want to bet on happening. And then on top of that, it's like, are you going to re-sign him? It feels unlikely at this point, but we'll see. But we just know he's had injuries in the past. Now, the other rumor tied directly to the Lions is apparently the Philadelphia Eagles have been making calls about number 6. So in our live stream, we talked about the Lions making calls about trading out of 18. I believe pretty much all of these. I buy all of these because if I was an NFL team and NFL teams around the league, like, you're making calls. You're trying to see where teams are at. You're doing this probably, time out. Like, figure out where teams are at. If this guy was available here, would you be willing to let us move in front of you? Like, all of those things, you're trying to figure out as a team and have prepared. That way, when it happens, you're not like, oh, shoot, should we do something about that? Kind of like in my, our mock draft live stream when I was like, what should I do when I'm trying to message people on Twitter? Like, that's not the strategy I don't think that Brad Holmes and other teams around the league want to go for. But with that being said, the rumor is that the Philadelphia Eagles have been calling about number 6 for the Detroit Lions. Now, Philly sits at number 10 in this year's draft. They also have pick number 30 in this year's draft, so they have 2 first-round picks, so moving up 4 spots. Technically speaking, the Lions were to move from 6 to 10 in this year's draft with the trade with Philadelphia. According to the trade draft chart, that'd be worth about 300 points, which Philadelphia Eagles have pick number 62 in this year's draft, which is worth about 300 points. So I don't know if it'd be just that easy as like, here, we'll give you your third-round pick, but that's kind of the trade value. Now, especially moving within the top 10, it's probably all case by case. Sometimes you have to give more, sometimes you give up less, depends what you're moving up for, all those things. We know Philly's not moving up for a quarterback, but the rumor is that they would be trying to move up for a guy like Jalen Carter, which, by the way, just throwing it out there, that would be disgusting. If Jalen Carter is what Jalen Carter can be, and you also tie that with Jordan Davis, we know they're like their defensive line, but my goodness, that's disgusting. But of course, that would have to happen if you're going to move up with the Lions, where Jalen Carter would have to be on the board for the Lions. Then he would have to weigh that return. So maybe you could potentially play some leverage into that and then get more in return. And I think the biggest thing is if the Lions want Jalen Carter and they like him and they check out and he's there at 6, you then take him instead of trying to leverage a potential second-round pick out of the team. That would be the way that I would go about it. But that just depends on how the Lions feel about the guy. Again, as a prospect, I think he's the best player prospect I've seen. In saying that, I haven't watched a lot of Bryce Young, just to be honest. Like, I've watched a lot of guys, but Bryce Young, I haven't, because I pretty much know he's going number 1. But I've watched a lot of guys. I love what he brings on the field. I think he'd be great for the Lions defense. But obviously the character has to check out, the football character, right? Because again, the football character, if it's there, a lot of times you could say that the football character will get him beyond some of the off the field issues because he loves the game too much to make those mistakes to hurt himself and his opportunity to play, right? So if he has that and the Lions feel like he has that, then that's great. And I think if they check out there and he's there at 6, I think the Lions would take him. But if, for example, they were like, hey, nah, we don't feel comfortable with that, and we're cool going elsewhere in this draft, and we're fine moving back. Maybe we want to go get a cornerback, whether that's Gonzalez or Witherspoon, and maybe one of those are sitting there because if Philly moves up, Raiders might take one, but you could potentially still get one at 10. Maybe you want to take Bijan at number 10, right? Maybe you want to go with Peter Skoronski if you got by the Chicago Bears at number 9 and probably kick him in the guard. Maybe you want to go edge rusher, and a guy like Nolan Smith is probably going to be there. Lucas Van Ness probably going to be there. Lions could be willing to move back and out of that spot. I think 18, we talked about it. I'm really down with the Lions looking to trade back from that spot, and I think they could move up from 6. I mean, this doesn't necessarily saying that the Lions don't want Jalen Carter. It's just saying that Philly, rumors are that they're making calls that if Carter is there at 6, that they would go up. Now, that also makes you wonder if they move up to like a pick 3. I mean, if he was sitting at, because he's going to sit there at 3. So, like, how much urgency they really have to make that happen, because it's a pretty good chance he's going to be there at 3. So, do they really want him, or they're like, hey, we'd give up really whatever we can to get up there at number 3 and then jump in front of the Lions to make sure we get that guy? And that could be something they're also feeling out with the Lions by making those calls. But either way, I guess we'll just see on that one. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, you guys know I would take him, but again, it all just comes down to the football character, and they know that way better than I do, so I'll leave that to them. Now, with that being said, those are the 2 rumors directly tied to the Detroit Lions. Outside of that, there have been a couple of draft prospect things that have popped up today I want to at least touch on, again, according to Walter Football, because it's all tied together, so I might as well throw it in here. And this is about 2 tight ends that the medicals reportedly haven't been great. This is something that teams check out. Sometimes I guess they can do these, when they have those private meetings with the players, the visits with the players. A lot of times you can check out some of those medicals and things like that. But with that being said, both of these players have had injuries in the past. First one being Darnell Washington. And reportedly, the rumor is, according to Walter Football, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but I could buy that this is true, that certain teams are worried about this. According to Walter Football, they're saying that multiple teams have flunked a physical for Darnell Washington, right? And he's not even on their boards at this point in time. Now, is this something that I can't believe? No, I could absolutely believe this. And I don't know if he's on everybody's board, even if he was healthy, but I could believe it. I mean, his past, even though it's not like injury littered in college, he has had injuries in similar positions. 2020, he had an undisclosed injury, didn't miss any time. 2021, he had foot surgery. 2022, he had a foot injury, so he missed some practice. 2023, this past season, he had an ankle strain that was reported. It was reportedly his left ankle, and he also had a soft tissue injury, did not require surgery, returned for the bowl game against Washington. It was an injury that took place against Ohio State, so he had a pretty good amount of time to return against Washington, had 1 reception in that game. But I think the concern could definitely be more so of the projection. Some guys don't even project injuries from my understanding, but when you do look at guys that is that big and now he's already had some of those lower, body injuries, ankle injuries, things like that. We've seen the Uzamas coming out, right? A big guy that's had to deal with injuries. You've seen the Zach Gentrys, the Mercedes Lewis, who had a stretch series, had to deal with injuries. You've also had guys that have been healthy like Cox. Like, there's been players that have been healthy with that as well, but I think it's something that legitimately could be the case for certain teams where they're like, hey man, I'm worried about that, and those injuries popping up. Like, we just saw DJ Chark, he had surgery on his ankle because he's had a lot of issues with that, and that was legit concern because it was like, well, it's the same spot from what we understand. It keeps being ankle. Like, that's concerning. If it's different injuries, that's one thing, but when it's the same area, it's like, that's concerning. And a guy that's just built like that, it almost gives me kind of like the Zion effect, right? Zion's so darn big, and it's like, dude, he's blowing out sneakers. Like, that doesn't happen, but he's so darn athletic, but he's so big at the same time. It's just, you don't see guys like that. Darnell Washington's he's kind of a unicorn. I mean, a guy that big, kind of a unicorn, but I'm not hoping for injury. I'm wishing for the best for that guy, absolutely. But that is just something that I've reportedly came out there. And then similar with Sam Laporta, it felt a little bit less worrisome, according to the rumor, that Laporta was hurt by his medicals potentially here. Now, he also is a guy that had surgery this past season with a torn meniscus. The turnaround time was pretty good for him. He returned in their bowl game against Kentucky, against the Wildcats. That was an injury that took place against Minnesota in November. So there was 5-6 week window there where he was able to return. But I know of that injury, so maybe that plays into it as well. You always got to check out the medicals. That's a huge part of it. And I believe that some of these, could definitely concern teams, especially the Washington one, just because of the past of guys that big. It's something to keep in mind, right, for the long term. But with that being said, again, they're just rumors. So I don't really know if that's true or any of this is true. But it's a rumor, so I'm sharing it with you guys. Take of it what you want. Like I said, I don't even know in the past if any of these happen. I do think the injury ones, you can't really say whether or not they're going to happen because certain teams may still like him. But I think definitely the Swift one, we'll see. I believe that the Lions probably have gotten calls about Swift just to see if there's, the Lions would be willing to part ways. And then I also believe the Lions have probably gotten calls about 6, probably from multiple teams. I would bet on multiple teams, but maybe it's just Philly. I don't know. With that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We're going to be live today. Thank you for watching.